what does it take for us to move from where we are to, let's say, a middle income? What is the gap, and what does that journey look like?
So, from low income to middle income is something that most countries are able to manage, because a lot of what needs to happen is copy paste, meaning these are problems that someone has already solved. So you kind of copy paste that here, and somehow the income and productivity starts to go up. So to give you an example, if you have no phones, which is what happened in rural India in 2008, you within 10 years go to the cheapest 4G data in the world. In 10 years, and so rural tendency is still 60%. It should be 80-90%, but it's still too low. But at least we have gone from 10% to 60%. In 10 years, you've traversed a distance which rural America, USA, did over 90 years. So they started with basic phones, then phones that you could use in cars, to 1G phones, to 2G phones, to 3G phones, to 4G phones, and then cheap 4G phones. 10 years. And this happened not because India developed cell phone technology, but you just copy pasted stuff which had been perfected. The cost of equipment had become cheaper, the cost of smartphones had become cheaper, and then you were copy pasting that. So that the growth from low income to middle income is somewhat easy, because the barriers are mostly internal, and so long as there is political consensus, there is political stability. So we are not sort of getting into wars and repeated, say, natural calamities or whatever. I think sustaining a growth rate where total factor productivity is rising at 2% a year is not that difficult. The challenge comes when you start going from about middle income to high income, because the models of growth that you need to adopt at that time are one, they're untested, meaning that you, so like in this case, even 5G, we are rolled out 7-8 years after the world started using it. But on 6G, we need to be front and center. And remember that 6G is a standard. Of course, there will be nuances which will come up over the next 5 years. 2030 is the launch. But does it really affect productivity? If you invest $10 billion as a telecom service provider, will you get the returns out of it? Will people buy those services? So there is a risk capital involved. Now, as you go from low income to middle income, all the business models are well tried and tested. So this is how you make cement. This is how you make steel. This is how you make cables and wires and tiles. But when you're going from, $10, $12, $13,000 per capita to say $25,000, $30,000 per capita, you are now starting to solve some really hard problems, and or you need to solve some very hard problems, and that requires risk capital. So, the risk in setting up a cement plant is very low, because it is reasonable to expect that volumes will grow at a certain level. You still need to execute, you still need to build the plant, make sure it runs, manage labor and all that. But it's not about, will the next display technology be TFT LCD, or will it be PDP, or will it be OLED? So you're not making those bets. Like even today, electric vehicles, we are waiting for the world to solve the problem of what technology will go into electric vehicles, and then we'll copy paste. But if you have to start solving the problem that China is trying to solve now, or the developed world has to solve, you have to place your bets. Are you going down the hydrogen way? If you are doing that and you go wrong, you lose a lot of capital. So having so the path from middle income to high income requires very different economic models, very different regulatory models. So you can have very tightly controlled economy which still grows, but there you may need market forces to be playing a larger role. Even in China, while the government now directs all capital, they rely heavily on market forces for innovation to happen and to create value. So the second big problem I think that India will have to face, and this is something that we all need to worry about, is that in the last 40-50 years, the growth of most economies was what you would call assisted rise. So it was in America's interest, because they had seen what had happened after the First World War, where when they tried to extract too much out of Germany, they pushed them into the hands of Hitler, and the Second World War had to happen. So they worked with the Marshall Plan. So the revival of Germany, revival of Japan was effectively engineered by America in order to separate, or at least keep the communists out. They worked with Taiwan, they worked with Korea. This is what I call assisted rise. When China started to open up in order to create a bulwark against or break apart the Soviet Union's sort of Eastern Bloc, they allowed China to rise. Once you become, say, a $15 trillion economy, so we are today about 4, but it is reasonable that in 6-7 years it'll be double, and then maybe another 7 years or 15 years later we could be a $15 trillion economy. And if that is the case, then suddenly your footprint is so large that you start getting into the problem of resisted rise, wherein others start getting threatened. So initially it is all about seeing you as an opportunity, seeing you as a potential counterweight to some other rising powers. But the moment you start becoming a power on your own, then you need to have R&D systems, you need to have technology sovereignty. So there are a lot of other things that start becoming challenging. And given our size and scale, I think we need to start worrying about those problems today. So the problems that will hit us in 2040, we need to start preparing systems and processes and the process of consensus building, so that we as a country believe that these things are necessary, that R&D is not something that the rich countries need to do and we can stay away from it and we can keep copy pasting, because very quickly we can get cut out of those technologies. So those are I would say the differences between going from low to middle income and then middle to high income.